Alright, now our next concept to get familiar with is that of a folder. Now, if you are familiar with Windows Explorer on your computer, then you're already familiar with how to work with folders inside of an authorate library. It's a very similar process. Now, the reasons why we have folders in an authorate library is to organize our content. Alright, now when we want to organize our content across different folders to kind of help you decide how to organize that content, we have 3 best practices here for you. Alright, now over on the left-hand side here we have a snapshot of the folders pane from an authorate library. Alright, and we have it segmented here by type of folder. Now we recommend 3 types of folders. Alright, now the naming convention you give to those folders can be completely customizable to whatever works best for your team. Alright, completely up to you. Also, you have an unlimited level of folders that you can create inside of your authorate library. So again, completely customizable by name, and then also the hierarchy that you set up for your folder structure. Basically exactly the same as Windows Explorer. Now what we recommend is that you have an area called a shared folders location. Your shared area is the location that's going to contain your commonly used objects, objects that may appear across the majority of your documentation. Common objects include such objects as table of contents, index, title page. Perhaps each one of your documents has the same disclaimer or warranty information or copyright notices. In that case, that would be perfect material for your shared folders location. And in this particular library, this area labeled with a 1 here for shared folders, it is referred to as the common content area in this library. And then underneath that, you have the various categories of common content: company information, front and back matter, common hyperlinks, common legal notices, common logos and icons, and so on. So this is a shared directory. It has our commonly used objects. Now, behind the scenes, why we're also recommending this type of setup is that the folder restrictions or security rights associated with these folders would be very loose, because this is reusable content that we want all of our authors to reuse. We want to encourage them to reuse this common content. So authors may be allowed to add or even modify and delete content in this directory, because it's basically your public access location that every author would have security rights to. Alright, now our second folder type is that of our working folders. This is the location that your authors would go to and author it to actually perform their work. So they come in the morning, they log into authorate. Where do they actually go to create their documentation? Well, they would go to their working folder. Their working folder contains the books that they are currently creating or modifying at that given time. Now, in this particular library, the working folders are first named after the department that those documents belong to, and then underneath that, they have the second level broken out by product name. So for example, underneath human resources, we've got our documents that we're working on for the HR group. Our research and development group has their documents that they're working on underneath this area. Our technical publications group has their content that they're working on in this area. and then they've got their knowledge base document here, and then some product-specific folders for our X1000, X2001, and X3001 product. All right. So what you would find in each one of these folders are the objects associated with that particular product. Now you may want to go with a different type of working folder setup. Some companies that I've seen like to start off their hierarchy by, say, user guide. And then one level underneath user guide, you then have the products associated with that. Or on the other side of that, some companies like to start off with a level that has their product name, and then a second level underneath that would be user guide, sysadmin guide, release notes, and so on. There's multiple ways to set up your working folders directory. It's completely up to you and what's going to work best for your group. All right. Now the great thing about these folders is that you can move them around and rename them just as easily as you created them. So you don't have to get that folder structure right the first time. You can pilot a folder structure and decide if that working folder structure works best for your team. You may find that 6 months from now, after working with AuthorIt, that you need to change the hierarchy a bit, where first you were going by product name, but now perhaps you want to start with doc type instead. And that's perfectly fine. You can move around these folders and rename them as necessary. It's very simple to do. All right, now last but not least, we have our third type of folder. We refer to these folders as restricted. All right, they're restricted because this is the area that belongs to our designers. All right, these folders contain the objects that control the consistency and standardization of our documents. So we don't want just anybody to have the rights to modify and delete content in our restricted folders location. We want to reserve those tasks for our designers and perhaps our administrators. So authors can look but not touch in this directory because it is restricted by security rights because it belongs to our designers. Now in this library, our restricted section starts off with a folder called Standards, and then underneath that is a folder named after the objects associated with enforcing standards. All right, starting off with media, you'll find over the next few days we're going to talk about a type of object called a media object, which controls our page layout. If you're familiar with FrameMaker files, it's very similar to a master page. We refer to them as media objects. We've also got a folder here for object templates, publishing profiles, and styles. These are the types of objects that enforce the consistency and standardization inside of our library. All right, so authors would likely have just read-only rights to the content that's in these folders. They may have read-write access to our common content area and then also to the working folder that belongs to their group. All right, so this is our best practice for setting up your folder structures, to have that common content or shared folder location that organizes commonly used objects, then to have a working folders location that has the actual books that your authors are working on, and then to have a restricted location, which is a location that enforces security rights on those objects that contain our standards, all right, our restricted folders location.